Let's bring in Chris Swecker, former assistant FBI director. Chris, thank you so much for being here under terrible circumstances. What's happening right now with the FBI investigation? From your perspective, they obviously have this individual who has been killed. I would imagine they're going to know his identification fairly quickly, go to his home. What else, Chris?
Right. I mean, it's highly likely at this point that they do know who this killer was. Car registration, identification on him, fingerprints, whatever. And yes, you're right. They're going to go to the house. They're going to find all media, electronic media, mobile devices, laptops, family members, friends. They're going to check all his social media postings if there are some, and there usually are. They've already announced that this is a terrorist motivation, which means that there was a political or social motivation. Terrorism is trying to affect political or social change through violence. So now, as you say, it's a question of whether it's domestic or international terrorism. So they're plumbing all of that evidence, video on the scene, talking to witnesses, were there writings in the car, et cetera. And now they're very focused on whether there's a continuing danger. Is there a danger of a copycat? Is there a danger of other co-conspirators? You know, which could be the case if this is international terrorism. We've had 4 years of open borders. We know that terrorist cells have infiltrated. So there's a lot going on right now, and the FBI is drawing on all the resources available, including ATF, local resources. They've got the capabilities.
Absolutely. Every tool at work, I'm sure. Chris, Molly here, I just want to ask you, the FBI was pretty swift to come out, as David Spunt has repeatedly pointed out, that they're investigating this as an act of terrorism. What are your thoughts on how quickly they made that determination?
Well, they obviously found some evidence in the truck, or they got onto his social media pretty quickly, or got with his friends and family, and they discerned a political motive pretty quickly, even despite the fact that the ASAC, or the Assistant Special Agent in charge, said no terrorism. That was a premature call and probably shouldn't have been made at all. But that's when you call it terrorism, it's in a different it's a different situation, obviously. And especially, in my view, if it's international terrorism, because now you're looking for cells. Was this part of a cell, or was this a lone radicalized actor? There's certainly precedent for this type of attack. We've seen it actually in New Orleans twice. It's a low-tech attack, and it can happen, pretty much anywhere. So, we have to get back to the nuts and bolts of security. It isn't always a grandiose terrorist attack. These are the types of attacks that we have to be preventing.
Chris, we were told at his press conference, it was described that this truck went around barricades. With your experience, I have to believe here, with the French Quarter in the heart of New Orleans, a major event on New Year's Eve, that the FBI, federal resources, and local resources were in contact in trying to protect this area, this iconic area. What happened here, you think? Because we were told also just in the last hour by Chuck, if you're able to go around a barricade, that is an absolute failure in protecting an area from a vehicle ramming attack.
Yeah, the federal agencies have a role to play in these types of large events, the bowl games, the parades. They have different levels that you can label them, and that will dictate what type of security is rolled out. But mostly it's an intelligence and prevention and cooperation posture until something has actually happened. In this case, the primary security would have been on the local police department, New Orleans Police Department, with assistance from an intelligence standpoint. But it's fundamental. I've worked in security. I was head of security when I retired from the FBI. I was head of security at Bank of America. You have to protect the largest number of people where the highest concentration of people are. That's your perimeter, and then different layers of security going outwards. In this case, this was very predictable. You can't just put up wooden barriers and think that's going to do the trick. A truck got past. This is not a lone actor with a handgun, which would be almost impossible to detect. This is a truck. So you almost have to, as your prior guest said, you almost have to classify this as a security failure. It's predictable. It's preventable.
Chris, the Sugar Bowl CEO put out a statement a little while ago this morning acknowledging these terrible events and also saying that they're working with local, state, federal levels to communicate further details as they become available. What do you think should happen with this other big event? A lot of people traveled there to be present for the Sugar Bowl.
Well, of course, there's going to be stepped up security. They already have a security plan, but there's going to be an enhanced security plan. And my fear, I worked the Salt Lake City Olympics. My biggest fear was not just in the venue, but all the crowds queuing up to go into the venue. So they need to push their perimeter out further now, knowing what's happened here, the chance of a copycat, the chance of was this a coordinated attack? You know, that regardless, parades and large events across the country are going to have to step up their game today and enhance their security and expect the worst.
Chris, do you expect this game to continue tonight?
I don't see them canceling this game. But that depends, too, on what the FBI knows at this point and, you know, whether there's a continuing danger. Was this part of something broader? You know, they're pulling out all, you know, it's all hands on deck right now. And we hope to hear from them. I'm sure they're conferring with the Sugar Bowl officials right now as we speak. But at the bare minimum, you're going to see a greatly enhanced security at the game. But I don't, absent something dramatic coming from the FBI, I don't see them canceling the Sugar Bowl tonight.
Chris, I want to ask you, when we were talking about a continuing threat, one of the big things that they've talked about and urged people to avoid the Bourbon Street area is because of potential IEDs, that an IED may have been found. So they've got a wide perimeter down there close to Bourbon Street. But what do you make of the fear about IEDs?
Yeah, I mean, by definition, they're weapons of mass destruction. And you know, there's different types of IEDs. You can have a simple pipe bomb, and unfortunately, you know, 10 years ago I wouldn't have disclosed this, but you know, there's recipes for making IEDs on the internet. So pretty much anyone can put an IED together. So again, you got to worry about copycats. You got to worry about whether this was something broader than just one lone individual. The presence of one IED means there may be other IEDs at that person's house. And I'm sure they're there now with a search warrant, going in very carefully. But once you bring in IEDs into the equation, I mean, now you're talking about a mass destruction explosive device.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that brings in a whole different set of problems and resources.
And I think that raises a great point. Investigators are always very concerned when you go to the home of a suspect like this, the potential for booby traps and all of that. Chris Swecker, thank you very much for being with us this morning and bringing us your insights. We greatly appreciate it.